People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Very good evening. The latest news headlines from the GB Newsroom. The King's coronation will take place on May the 6th next year. King Charles III will be crowned alongside Camilla, Queen Consort, according to Buckingham Palace. The coronation will take place at Westminster Abbey 8 months after the death of Her Majesty the Queen. The date also marks the birthday of the King's grandson Archie, who'll be celebrating turning 4 with his parents Harry and Meghan. More than 2,000 specially invited guests will be seated inside the Abbey to witness the historic occasion, the first coronation in Britain for almost 70 years. The Chancellor says he remains committed to measures set out in his recent mini-budget, despite further intervention from the Bank of England today. The central bank was busy buying up more government debt today, having warned of additional risks to the UK's financial stability. Facing questions in the Commons, Kwasi Kwarteng described the current support for households and businesses as strong, but he refused calls from his own party to streamline spending on HS2 and Quangos and instead lower taxes for small businesses. The Prime Minister says G7 leaders will not waver in their resolve to help Ukraine achieve peace. The comment comes after President Zelensky joined Liz Truss and other heads of state to discuss the recent series of Russian attacks on Ukraine. In a statement, the leaders condemned Moscow for targeting civilians and said it constituted a war crime. President Zelensky also called for enough air defence capability to stop Russia.
The first point is defence support, an air shield for Ukraine. This is part of the security guarantees that are an element of our peace formula. When Ukraine receives a sufficient quantity of modern and effective air defence systems, the key element of Russia's terror, rocket strikes, will cease to work.
A British businessman has been arrested and charged with conspiring to violate sanctions imposed by the United States government on a Russian oligarch. The US Department of Justice says Graham Bonham Carter carried out more than £900,000 worth of illicit transactions to fund real estate properties for Oleg Deripaska's benefit. The Department of Justice in the States says they'll be seeking Mr. Bonham Carter's extradition. And finally, the actress Angela Lansbury has died at the age of 96. She was perhaps best known for her long-running role as amateur sleuth Jessica Fletcher in Murder, She Wrote, and as the voice, of course, of Mrs. Potts in the animated movie Beauty and the Beast. Her family released a statement this evening saying she died peacefully in her sleep at her Los Angeles home. She was just 5 days short of her 97th birthday. Angela Lansbury, who's died today. You're up to date on TV, online and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Time now for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. Sometimes I find myself blessed to be in the company of comedy giants. Thursday's show this week will feature none other than John Cleese, but tonight we just have to make do with two actual giants, i.e. comedians who are unnaturally tall, Leo Kearse and Jonathan Cogan. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 Ks out of 3 ain't bad. So, let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We will start with The Telegraph. And familiar news, sterling falls once again as bank pulls plug on pension help. The Guardian has power giants to face windfall tax. After all, as Trust delivers yet another U-turn, and MPs call for menopause check at 45 for women. Not sure that's directed specifically at Liz Truss. Wednesday's Financial Times, the Bank of England buys gilts yet again to prevent a fire sale by pension funds. And Kishida stands by Bank of Japan's ultra-loose policy despite yen plunge. Is there a currency in the world that's not plunging? One of them must be, I suppose, as a benchmark. Mirror, don't let James's killer walk free. Murderer could be released in days as parole hearing. And the Express scaled back ceremony on May the 6th. As Charles is very aware of financial hardships, the King demands coronation should reflect the costs crisis. That goes against the grain of royal tradition. It has to be said the Sun suspect attacked girl near Prior days before Maddie was taken. That's Maddie back on the front pages after all this time. Is a little aftershocks are less and less frequent these days, but clearly there are some people who would still like to see justice done on that front. The Star finally, fake astronaut tricks woman out of £27,000 to rescue him from space. I love you to the moon and back. And those were your front pages. So, Jonathan, we kick off this morning in The Telegraph with what is becoming, I suppose, the sort of story de nos jours.
It really is. Flavour of the year. Hopefully not. So the pound falls sharply as Bailey insists he will not extend emergency support. So Andrew Bailey prompted a sharp fall in the pound after insisting that the Bank of England would end emergency support for pension funds on Friday. So the sterling dropped 1.3% to below $1.10. As the bank governor insisted that a $65 billion bond buying programme that has protected retirement schemes from collapse will be withdrawn at the end of the week. So this is a huge safety net that's sort of now been removed.
Or rather, he's saying it's about to be removed, so sell everything you've got now. You've got 3 days to clear.
Exactly. He said you've got 3 days to get this done, spoken like a true mafioso. And, he also hit back at Kwasi Kwarteng. Basically, after his mini-budget, a load of sort of turbulences kind of rocked the market a bit, and now people are worried that because the cost of borrowing has gone up for the UK, people are now kind of losing faith and stuff. And that's about the extent of it, to which I understand it.
Yeah.
If I'm brutal.
Well, there are a lot of moving parts. Anything you can add to that, Liam?
It's very complicated. Well, I've just got to say that, they introduced this bond buying scheme, and then they said, but you've only got 3 days left to do it. So it's supposed to provide stability, but saying to people, you've got this like hard deadline, and after that there's no help, that reduced the stability. That made people panic again.
I mean, I think it's probably fair to say that when you have an intervention, and he does say that, when you have an intervention of this kind, it's not permanent. We can't obviously offer you.
But you don't tell people when they're going to be. When you're going to pull the rug out from under their feet.
Like a DFS sale.
It literally is, because it could just roll on forever, and we're going to become the Weimar Republic with hyperinflation. We've already got the degeneracy. So why not add the fiscal policy as well?
Well, that would be really something, wouldn't it? Because I do always remember when I was a lot of the fiscal and general economic policies of the government, not just under Kwasi Kwarteng, but quite a lot of the last few years, remind me a lot of the questions I used to ask my mum when I was about 6, you know, like, why don't they just print more money?
Yeah.
You know,
give everyone £1 million.
That's right. And she would go, oh, Germany. And then we would have a discussion about people buying a sandwich with a wheelbarrow full of money.
I'd ask my mum, why are we always worried? And she'd go, oh, Germany. different cultural background.
Well, that's the level. But, I mean, the bond market, it's a funny thing, isn't it? Because it's absolutely vast. It's incredibly crucial. It's incredibly influential. There's somebody, I can't remember who it was, I should look this up, who said that when they were young, they always felt that, you know, if they wanted to be reincarnated, it would be as Napoleon, you know, or Julius Caesar, or like, you know, like some massively powerful. But they said now, if I was to be reincarnated, I'd want to be reincarnated as the bond market, because that actually has power over the rise and fall of civilizations and governments. And yet nobody outside of the financial markets really understands it.
Yeah.
You know, it's incredibly simple. It's just IOUs from government.
But I don't understand why the government, instead of writing these IOUs, why don't they just keep money in an account and use it instead of like having to raise debt? Like, why can't they just run it like a household budget?
Have a budget reconciliation on Friday with their husband.
Yes.
They can say, you should not have spent that on that hospital. You did not have that money, did you? Well, I don't know whether we're going to pull out of this nosedive, but Jonathan. No, sorry, this is going to Leo now, isn't it? This is Scotch news. Nicola Sturgeon has been promised her very own My First Referendum kit for Christmas.
Well, Nicola Sturgeon is pushing for another independence referendum in Scotland. I mean, the last one was supposed to be a once-in-a-generation vote. And that was 8 years ago, which isn't a generation.
It's a generation in iPhones.
People are dying so young in Scotland now. It almost is a generation. We've got parity with badgers at the moment. So but she's gone to the Supreme Court. Her Lord Advocate, top Scottish law person, has gone to the Supreme Court and said that, you know, oh, don't worry about the Scottish independence referendum. You know, if we hold another independence referendum, because it'll be purely advisory. It won't actually have any legal, you know, weight or any binding effect. Obviously,
don't
Brexit.
drink and drive.
Well, Brexit was
that was purely
an advisory thing.
But
so
they
I mean,
promised, didn't they? That was the thing. They added a sort of my word is my bond.
But obviously, I mean, if it came back and, you know, 90% of Scottish people, you know, went crazy for whatever reason and wanted independence, you know, they'd have to make it happen. So it's a nonsense that it would be advisory. I just can't believe that there's still support for the SNP. They've been in power for 15 years and they're paid so much money. I mean, if they left the UK, I don't know where they get all the money to paper over all the mistakes they're making. Like, on every metric a government can be measured on health, education, life expectancy, drug deaths, everything, corruption, incompetence, everything. The SNP are absolutely failing. They get a huge amount of money from Westminster. For every £100 spent on somebody in the rest of the UK, Scotland gets £126 per person. That's the sort of, and it's just a bribe to sort of keep them in, and it's not working, and they want to leave. And like, for all that Brexit has been, you know, certainly caused some economic and social and political upheavals, Scotland leaving would be way off the scale. It would be disastrous for Scotland. Imagine a hard border when you drive up there, and a different currency. I mean, how would trade possibly work? And Scotland does the vast majority, 66% of its trade with the rest of the UK.
Yes,
so
it's even more decisive than, I mean, the proximity of Britain to Europe was pretty decisive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we kidded ourselves that didn't really matter, but that wasn't really the case.
Yeah.
But this would be. And I cannot believe that that they have not noticed how utterly incompetent their government has been on all other fronts, except campaigning for independence. They've thrown everything at that.
That's the trouble with a single-issue government. All they care about is independence, and they're failing on everything else. But the thing is, they've made it part of the independence claim because they blame everything that goes wrong in Scotland on Westminster. They say, oh, Westminster's why we've got 3.5 times higher drug deaths than the rest of the UK.
It's like some kind of suicide vehicle, you know, streaming towards its target with doors flying off, you know, wheels coming off, but it's just determined.
And also, Nicola Sturgeon looks like all 3 kids from Harry Potter, so I don't trust her. Pick one. Take one.
And if they did get independence, within a fortnight, the SNP would be complete pariahs in Scotland for dragging them into this horrible political and economic
I suppose
turmoil.
at that point, in the same way that Nigel Farage has joined the GB News and enjoying it, a long Indian summer as a first-rate broadcaster, but he's done his job at that point, haven't you, I suppose, and she would be the same.
Yeah.
I don't know which channel would have her, though.
Previous SNP leaders have appeared on Russian television, whatever it's called, the Russian channel that was in the UK.
Do you have anything you need to say on this, Jonathan? You're wearing a vaguely tartan-coloured shirt.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's in
I didn't know I was on today.
The medium is the message.
Oh, yeah, I see. I only just got that.
Back to the Times now, Jonathan. Keir Starmer limbering up, moving to a war footing in readiness for the next general election, which at least could be imminent.
Looks like he's ready to rally. So Keir Starmer sacks Chief of Staff to put Labour in general election mode. So Keir Starmer, who is, in my opinion, the human equivalent of a decaffeinated tea bag, he said his restructuring has been accelerated by the scale of Tory collapse. So, he's now hiring a new Chief of Staff to propel Labour towards government after telling staff that a general election could happen at any time. So he's ready to go. The Labour leader has restructured his top team, removing Sam White, who's been a Chief of Staff for a little over a year.
Yeah. Sam White has not been a great success, I believe. They felt that he has not had them sort of on the front foot. Mm-hmm. And I remember when... it was not quite the same arrangement, but I do remember when Gordon Brown sort of finally achieved his dream of running the country, and he had an opportunity to call a general election at that point, and they dithered. And they think it cost him. He could quite easily have got himself another decent term at that point. But then it's like, Joe, but that's not quite the same thing when you're not actually in power, is it? Of course, that's a crucial difference.
Yeah.
And I cannot see. I mean, I do understand the sense, and I understand the propaganda value, I suppose, of reminding people that this government is, in many, objectively speaking, on the verge of collapse. Yeah. But the more it's on the verge of collapse, the less likely it is that they will use their 80-seat majority to.
And we're still like a year and a half away from the final date that it can be, and a lot can change in a year and a half. Previously, political leaders have been saved by going to war, which looks pretty easy right now. There's a lot of choice.
Very similar, in fact, that's right. I mean, Margaret Thatcher's first term was very shaky, wasn't it? And she was certainly on course to be wiped out before the Falklands were invaded. Yeah. So, I don't know. Some people would say that was very much Biden's calculation as well with Ukraine.
Yeah. And also, I mean, the thing that's a terrible quandary going into the next election, whenever it is that normally, if the economy's in a nosedive and, you've got all the open borders and, all these problems with society and politics and the economy, you can vote for the Tories to fix it. Yeah. And this time it's the Tories' fault.
Yeah, and they've been in power too long. That is a thing that happens when a party is in power too. Even though they've had a number of different governments, a number of different party leaders, it gets to the point where you cannot point at anyone else. Yeah. Even though I think it is still Tony Blair's fault. Back to the Telegraph for allegations that Elon Musk further enhances his role as the modern Batman, with suggestions he has a hotline to Moscow, it seems.
Yeah, so this is allegations that Musk has denied. So according to, I think it was Vice that leaked it first, and now it's in the Telegraph, Putin told Elon Musk, they had a conversation, Putin told Elon Musk that he would use nuclear weapons if the annexation of the 4 areas in Ukraine that Russia made last week wasn't recognised. He said, but Elon Musk has denied the report. The alleged conversation was reported in an email sent to Eurasia Group subscriber on Tuesday by Ian Bremner, the group's founder. So Mr. Bremner wrote that the Tesla CEO told him that Putin would accomplish his goals no matter what. I don't know, it's weird. And then Musk tweeted this bizarre sort of peace plan for Ukraine that didn't seem to take into account, anything that Ukrainian people might want in terms of their sovereign territory being recognised and, all the hardships they've endured.
Or indeed gave any justification for why he was asking this. I mean, why he should be involved at all, because he really shouldn't be.
Absolutely. I mean, he's an engineer, not a politician. I think it's interesting because he's obviously a brilliant engineer, just mind-blowing. He's like, he's like the Steve Jobs of stuff that isn't a phone, but he's not a politician. I don't think, if he's speaking to Putin's a very Machiavellian character. He rose to the top of the Russian security services, then 20 years as Russian leader. Man, that guy knows how to manipulate people into doing what he wants. So I don't think Musk is the right person to be like meeting Putin and making decisions.
No,
like that.
I would tend to agree with you. I do think that Musk is quite a useful provocateur. There are several provocateurs on Twitter, a couple of them currently banned, who do shake things up very interestingly. But yeah, I found that jarring. And I am somebody who is sort of open to the, you have to recognise that at some point a negotiated settlement will end this war, and it will probably involve...
Putin, I think it'll involve Putin hanging from piano wire.
Yeah, well, I mean, that, I know that the Finnish Prime Minister said as much recently, didn't she? So I don't know, maybe there is an appetite for that. What do you think, John?
Musk talking about, giving up land and stuff. He's just released a new robot. Not a good timing. We've seen one of them. What about 10 million of them marching in unison to tequila?
Has he really? Has he got a robot? Because I know right. Is it like an independent? Like it's not like a robot as in a driverless car. It's an actual.
Oh, it's like a walkie-talkie, chokey in your sleepy. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
To be fair, it looked like I could take it down with a screwdriver.
Yeah. For now, that'll get better though.
It wasn't like the Ed 209 from RoboCop.
That'll mess you up.
Still with. Do you remember Brassneck? This came up today because I remember. Thin Lizzy. Brassneck was in Dandy. It was a proper old school. Comic.
Guy.
Brassneck was the offspring of Thin Lizzy.
Okay.
No, it started off with a discussion of Thin Lizzy, the Irish rock band.
Right.
And I was saying the reason that they were called Thin Lizzy, which is an odd name, is it was a joke about Tin Lizzy.
Right.
Who was a character in the Dandy, and they used to say, tin is like the Irish accent of saying thin, so they called themselves Thin Lizzy, thinking that was Tin Lizzy's real name. Anyway, she had a son called Brassneck, and he was a sort of clanking, robot boy who went to school in a strip.
And Viz did a pastiche of it called Tin Ribs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is what I thought you were referring to.
I haven't seen that. It was bound not to have. I used to love Brassneck. Anyway, still with it, he had a great massive sort of iron, a brass, I guess, a jaw that clanked. With the Telegraph, Jonathan, encouraging signs that plucky Iran has managed to revive its uranium enrichment program following recent setbacks.
Some exciting news for those looking forward to the end of days. So Iran a step closer to having nuclear weapons, the UN warns. So the leaked International Atomic Energy Agency report said the country is expanding banned uranium enrichment at a plant destroyed by Israeli spies. So perhaps quite worryingly, Iran is quickly expanding its uranium enrichment capabilities and plans further advances in moves that could shorten the time needed to build an atomic bomb, according to a leaked United Nations report.
I'm quite excited about this as well, only because following, the proximity of nuclear war on the horizon, I've actually been watching a few documentaries on YouTube to educate myself, remind myself about how they're built and the history of the atom bomb, the thermonuclear hydrogen bomb and so on. Right. And so I sort of understood some of this stuff. I do actually know what these... the cyclotrons, the centrifuges do and how it works. Do you know how it works?
Well, they have to cascade because it has to be so refined for a bomb. So they get the uranium gas and spin it and then spin it another one.
Because normally if you use a centrifuge to separate things, you're separating different kinds of molecules. But with uranium, it's 238 and 235.
Right, yeah.
And that's just the number of neutrons. So it's just 3 neutrons more in the good stuff. That's
you get this is scoop it off with your bare hand.
Exactly. Just like combing your way off the curd. Oh, my goodness, it is extraordinary. But they've managed to get it up and running again. I think it's going to take them some time.
Okay.
I think there'll be regime change in Iran before they make a bomb. And hopefully the new regime will be less bomby.
Well, it's going to be feminist, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we don't want to annoy them. Oh, my God, I've seen some feminists on Twitter.
That's all for part 1. Coming up in part 2, we have legal action over the Queen's hidden wealth, King Charles' upcoming coronation, and a hypocritical government. We'll see you in a second.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. And hello, we're welcome back to Headliners. Simon Evans, still in the company of Leo Kearse and Jonathan Cogan. We're trying to remember other comic book robot boys. So if you have any, send them into the Twitter account. That would be handy for the final third. The Guardian now, Leo, and the funeral meats are barely cold, but Britain's transparent or something. Anyway, they're demanding to have a poke about in Her Majesty's privates.
They do have a name. It's the Information Commissioner, apparently.
Right.
But apparently ministers could face contempt of court proceedings unless they respond to a request for documents that reveal how the late Queen concealed part of her private wealth from the public. So they asked this was a Freedom of Information request, I assume, to the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, which has stonewalled the request for 2 years, which you're not allowed to do under Freedom of Information requests.
Right.
So the size of the Queen's personal fortune, including her investments, has never been disclosed to the public, but estimates speculate that it's hundreds of millions of pounds, which I'd expect because she's a queen.
She's supposed to be quite wealthy, isn't she?
Yeah,
I mean,
I've seen her house.
Yeah.
I've seen her house. And she's got other houses as well.
She's
There's
not
one
the
in Windsor.
most wealthy woman. She's certainly not the wealthiest. I mean, I don't think she's even in the top 100 in the country. I don't think she's even a billionaire.
Well,
I mean,
officially, but
yeah,
that's the question.
But it's soft power, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would imagine now that she's dead, some of that wealth will probably have to go through the usual chancery and sort of, there'll be some sort of execution of her estate or something.
There's no. They're exempt from inheritance tax and all that kind of stuff because there's some sort of rule about kings, which seems so unfair. Because if there's one group of people who can afford to pay the tax, it's heads of state.
They don't have to.
The entire country.
I mean, apparently her crown is worth over £500. That's what I heard.
They should put it back in the Indian dirt where it came. That would restore the honour. I do remember she had some stuff in the Panama Papers, didn't she? And one of those other big reveals, that is a bit shady. I would rather she just had a big chest down in the vaults.
Yeah.
Be rather like spilling out.
Yeah, like Scrooge McDuck.
By a dragon.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll see if that comes out. Staying with Leo for further royal news now. King Charles King Charles III is to be crowned.
Don't get people worried about another funeral. I mean,
on 6th of May 2023, but he's going for a sort of TLDR version.
Yeah, so apparently wants a pared-back ceremony, so they're going to go to Weatherspoons and then back to his living room for sausage rolls.
With a wet bar.
I mean, pared back for a king is obviously not that pared back. It's still going to be at Westminster Abbey, which is a really posh church. And he's going to be anointed with holy oil, receive the orb, I don't know which orifice, the coronation ring, that orifice, the sceptre, and then be crowned with the majestic St. Edward's crown and blessed during the ceremony. Camilla will also be anointed with holy oil and crowned, which will probably make Harry Hill furious.
As long as she doesn't receive the orb, I suppose.
Yeah, well, they'd give it white first.
I think it's, guys, my one fear is that having gathered the world's leaders, extraordinary and very moving, and I felt quite flattered, frankly, by the turnout from the world's good and the great. You know, they all came over for the funeral. They're going to be asked to come back a year later for the coronation. They might just find that they're washing their hair that night. I feel, you know, and we might get the second in command a little bit. Will that be a bad thing? Wouldn't that?
Well, maybe that's why it's pared down, because they don't want to worry about, you know, inviting people.
A lot of people on Zoom. Yeah. The front row entirely. What do we got next? Jonathan, UK unemployment is at near record lows, though perhaps not for the best of reasons.
Yes, exactly. This isn't the good news that I thought it was on first read. So UK unemployment falls to 48-year low amid rise in long-term illness. So the Office for National Statistics said the unemployment rate fell to 3.5% over the 3 months to August. So the UK's unemployment rate dropped to its lowest for almost half a decade as more Britons left the labour market.
Half a century.
Oh, sorry, half a
century. Oh, it does say half a decade, but it's 48-year low, it says. So
yes, I'm going to... The Independent, don't ever buy that again.
Make your mind up.
Let's be honest, who's buying The Independent? No, sorry, it's great. Oh, I don't know. Ofcom. Right, so the UK's...
I've got 20p, I can afford it.
Yeah, that much it is. Oh, that's too much.
But 3.5%, but why?
Why? Well, basically, due to long-term illness. So there really seems to be, since COVID pandemic, there seems to be a significant increase in people who are effectively too ill to go to work.
Yeah, and they're not seeking work even.
Yeah, exactly. So they're not even in the job market. So saying unemployment has gone down because long-term illness has increased is kind of like saying I've lost quite a bit of weight because I've had my diabetic foot removed. It's not really the best way of describing, you know. But I guess
how much of this is long COVID, which is definitely a real thing.
That's what I mean. Absolutely. I mean, they are. Long COVID it does seem to be a contributing factor here.
I'll tell you what's a contributing factor here. It's the fact that you get more money from the government if you go off long-term sick. And all you need to do is say, oh, I've got a sore back. Oh, my back's sore. And nobody can disprove it.
So people have got a taste from the lockdowns of not working.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to work anymore. And also, you used to get like a decent amount of money. I was reading Ian Brown from the Stone Roses was talking about how much money you got on benefits, unemployment benefits in the 80s. And it was great. You could furnish your flat, all this money kicking about. Because obviously, I mean, the government at that time was using unemployment as a sort of lever to keep inflation down. Yeah. So it would be unfair to punish unemployed people that much. But people know how to work the system, and you know for a long time now you get terrible money on job seekers allowance. So if you switch tack and say, oh, I've got this like long-term medical issue, I know people I grew up with who basically play the benefit system like a career. So you can get all these different things.
Hey, don't dob in Darius, that's right.
I do remember it said that before, because most people have a slightly sort of hazy idea of what existed before the welfare state. There were safety nets of one kind, but they used to be local. They used to be very obviously like a local community or possibly the business, and they would be a beneficial. Would have got like a society essentially that you pay into, and if they would. But the good thing was, if you knew that Darius was off with a bad back, and then you walk past Darius's house and Darius is out in the front garden digging his spuds up, you kind of go, "Oi, Darius, I thought you were supposed to have a bad back."
And there's a little bit of like,
you know,
In fairness to Darius, he did break his back, so
he doesn't like potatoes. But still, you get the point. When there is that kind of little bit of local accountability, whereas now, of course, it's all done through the state.
Yeah.
So there's no opportunity for anybody to call anybody out. I don't know whether it would be healthy if we lived in a different place. I'm sure there are downsides to that as well. But there's something to be said for that, isn't there?
Yeah.
Just a little bit of like, can you look me in the eye?
Community spirit.
Yeah.
And the Guardian always says, like, oh, only 0.2% of benefits claimants are fraudulent. If it's only 0.2%, I must know every single one of them. You know what I mean?
You've got to get better friends, mate.
You just have a higher bar for fraudulence, I suspect. Leo, this is the Daily Mail now, with further sordid details from the crew of everyone's favourite trans sleaze outrage machine, Mermaid.
What a great line. Parents of children who use transgender charity Mermaids have complained to the watchdog after an employee reportedly posted explicit pictures and sexualised images as a schoolgirl online. So this is Darren Mew, until recently a digital engagement officer at the charity who identifies as they, them. Of course he does.
Mew itself sounds like a weird pronoun, actually, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mew too.
He's done a Mew. He shared a picture of, well, they say themself. It's obviously a fella. Shared a picture of himself on Instagram showing an upward view through a short skirt he was wearing. I think we've got that picture. Oh, no, we don't. But Mew also appeared in a collection of pictures for LGBT outlet House magazine in which he was naked holding his erect penis with pairs of breasts that have further penises protruding from them. So not the ideal candidate for a charity working with children.
Right.
I mean, imagine my surprise. And it comes after a Mermaids trustee was revealed to have spoken at a pro-paedophile conference. And this is a problem with transgender charities because, the whole transitioning thing, it's sort of breaking the bond with parents. They say, oh, if your parents are opposed to this, they're transphobic, so, you don't need to tell your parents. So they break that link, and parents are usually the best people to look after children. Sure. Also, they're saying children can consent to surgery at young ages and hormones and things like that. And, so the implication is if they can consent to something as serious as surgery or, long-standing, chemical castration or whatever, what else can they consent to? And it also freezes children in a prepubescent state until they reach the age of consent. So the whole thing is, I'm not saying that's, obviously Mermaids
but
charity.
These are propositions that would appeal to somebody.
If somebody was a paedophile, this is something this would draw, like a religious organisation might. This is the sort of thing that, provides access to children and all the problematic things that would engender paedophilia.
Did you mention him just then, Jacob Breslow, who was the one only a couple of days ago?
That was the one who spoke at the conference.
Yeah. It is a very worrying trend. I mean, I dare say that there are journalists now, probably at the Daily Mail, who are, employed full-time to rake through every single previous Mermaid employee, everyone who ever delivered a package or who, swept the path and find out if there's any dirt. But it doesn't feel like they're having to dig that deep, does it, to come up with this kind of muck?
Well,
what do you think, John?
Yeah, it really does seem to be sort of scandal after scandal. And is that just indicative that there's, a problem at the very core of that whole kind of the culture of that?
It feels like it's going to collapse pretty soon. I think Mermaids, it can't survive very much longer. It's a bit like, there's a different type of scandal, but the children's charity...
Tavistock.
The one in Brixton a few years ago, the children's charity, where do you remember that one, the... Batman.
Oh, Batman Gilida or whatever.
Camilla.
And, dressed like a hot air balloon.
Yeah, and she had been. I think it had been a very, again, probably well-intentioned charity to get young urban kids back on the straight and narrow, but it turned out they'd just been handing out money left, right, and centre, and it was, it was corrupt.
This is why I never give to charity. It's not the reason. The reason is that I want to spend the money on myself.
Yes.
But it's a good side effect of me not giving money to charity.
Absolutely. Well, the whole economic theory is founded on the proposition that your vices are what keep the country ticking over.
But this, the transitioning children thing, I would think it's a huge scandal. That's already breaking with the Tavistock, which is a child transitioning service. So they've got, I think, over 1,000 families suing them for malpractice and maltreatment. And this is a huge scandal that's just going to keep breaking as more of these things.
Mermaids as quickly as possible, if I was you, Bank of England. We move on to The Independent, and the government has been called hypocrites, Jonathan.
That is very true. So an academic accuses government of hypocrisy for cancelling her speech over criticism of policies.
Yeah.
So Dr. Devlin, an academic at King's College London, says she's received an email saying the government had blocked her talk because she had made criticism of government policy via social media. Now, there are justified cries of hypocrisy as the government cancelled her planned speech because she criticised their policies, whilst they're also proposing laws to fine universities for blocking speakers with unpopular views. So there's an obvious contradiction here. It really is,
And also, she was criticising them. I think I was initially a bit like, OK, let's find out what she's been saying. But she is right. She has been criticising about their online harms bill, which is probably the single worst piece of legislation they've come up with in the last 10 or 12 years.
And it's been through various iterations because it's such an appalling piece of legislation.
And also,
could well
she's written a book about sex robots.
Yeah.
So I'm very much in Camp David on this one.
I don't think I'd want to have sex with like a cold and unfeeling, emotionless machine because, that makes quite...
But enough about the Tory party.
Yeah, robophobe.
I was doing a talk about sex robots a few years ago at the Battle of Ideas. I'm there this Saturday, and incidentally, folks, if you want to come and hear my views about facial recognition cameras, which I suppose could tie in with sex robots quite closely. But
so I
was aware of Dr. Devlin then. She's very much the expert on that subject. But I don't know. It seems. The odd thing is that they're completely. I don't know whether they're hypocrites exactly, because it's clearly very much a stated policy. They've written her an email saying, you have been critical in the past about the government, and therefore you can't speak.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems extraordinary to me.
But governments change, policies change. You could be critical of a policy that then changes and then gets,
And as we're seeing with Russia, government works best when it can be criticised and ideas can be critiqued in the open.
Yeah. It really does seem odd that. There must be some piece to this puzzle I'm missing about the very nature, this very specific nature of this event. But, yeah, it just seems wrong. Leo, we usually like to say the clock is ticking for TikTok, but GCHQ says not, in fact.
No, so the director of GCHQ, which is the government agency that deals with all communications on the internet and everything like that, Jeremy Fleming, he said he would encourage young people to use TikTok despite a campaign pledge by the Prime Minister Liz Truss to crack down on the Chinese video app and companies like it. So, there is concern that China's seeking to impose its values in strategic areas of science and technology. And I think TikTok forms part of a sort of, we're almost in a Cold War with China. And the whole of the West, America as well, is in a Cold War.
It's a third opium war.
Yeah. And TikTok it's more addictive.
Yeah.
It's like children, the average amount of time spent is an hour and a half a day. That's insane. Wow. You could watch a Bond movie.
But they do flick. I've looked at it a couple of times. Jonathan and I have been talking about trying to chop up some of my content and put it on there. But it is incredible how quickly it snags you and gets you. It's like encountering a sea monster, isn't it? Before you know it, you're underwater.
But the content that the algorithms boost in the West, because it's Chinese-owned, TikTok is Chinese-owned, so it boosts just degenerate content of just vapid sort of dancing, social malaise, everybody having, gender pronouns and all that sort of nonsense. Whereas in China, the same app promotes things like algebra and family values.
Really?
And things like that. Yeah. So it's really sinister how they're using it as a weapon to weaken the West. And they're doing the same thing with fentanyl as well. So most of the fentanyl in America and in the West is manufactured in China, and they're flooding the West with it to kill. And TikTok is also killing children. So
digital fentanyl.
These crazes go through TikTok where it's like, why don't you see how long you can hang from your neck? Literally stuff like that.
Oh, I know. And I mean, you might even say, to push it to an extreme, that their whole capacity for fast-moving consumer goods, I mean, they just addicted us to being able to anaesthetise ourselves with cheap consumer goods.
We should all go off grid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. If you see TikTok in your child's phone, smack that phone out of its hands.
And smack the child. Oh, no, we don't.
But GCHQ, man, he says, no, just use it, just think before you use it. Well, that's nothing, is it?
Somebody wants to watch teenagers dance. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure he's great.
You know for a fact that I saw two interesting things. I mean, we've known for years that people like Zuckerberg and Jobs and Gates don't even let their kids have smartphones until they're at least 13.
Yeah.
Somebody else said online the other day, I think it was Rockefeller he was talking about, John D. Rockefeller, wealthiest man in history, adjusted for inflation, basically didn't let his children out the house until they were 7. He had them homeschooled, and all their tutors were handpicked by him.
Wow.
And they were not exposed to any contrary or conflicting ideas or ideologies that he wouldn't agree with or hadn't explicitly signed off until they were 7. And then they were allowed to go and mingle with their peers. And as a result, he says, that is why the Rockefeller Institute to this day sustains and maintains its power base, whereas very often, you get a...
Has that been done every generation?
From wealth to rags to riches and back to rags again every generation.
That's something he did every generation. So
I think that bit has been drilled into them. You keep the young Rockefellers are kept at home and they are homeschooled until they're 7.
Maybe that's going a bit far, but definitely TikTok. Delete TikTok off the phone.
Now, you see, you look like a reasonable compromise. Coming up, we'll be talking about another sporting controversy, why men are allergic to orgasms and why we should tax cow farts to save the planet. See you in a minute.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Welcome back to Headliners. I am still Simon Evans, and we still have Leo Kearse and Jonathan Cogan with us. So the Daily Mail now, and it seems another comedy legend is following in John Cleese's footprints and expressing concern over the cultural revolution which is sweeping through comedy.
That is right. So Blackadder writer Ben Elton compares modern wokery with Chairman Mao's communist China and says younger generation is all about making rules. So comedian Ben Elton has compared the modern woke movement to communist China, claiming there are things you can no longer say. So Elton, who was famous for Blackadder and the Young Ones, one of my favourite TV shows of all time, he contrasts the shows back then and how they are now, and how they're much more rebellious and you could get away with so much more and actually experiment and take risks.
In fact, the Young Ones, I would say, I remember it very fondly, and it was explicitly taking the piss out of that kind of mindset, because Rick was a kind of foreshadowing of the woke, wasn't he? He was like a kind of proto-woke, you know, and they would all just smack him over the head with a frying pan.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great show. But Ben Elton's saying there's a whiff of Maoism in the air. He says young people don't break rules anymore. But that's not true. I didn't wash my hands once during COVID. For example, thank you, Ben.
So I washed my hands, but I refused to sing Happy Birthday. It's something from the Little Red Book.
Yeah, my parents didn't sing Happy Birthday.
I don't know about Maoism. I remember seeing one of the Adam Curtis documentaries that did the Cultural Revolution. A very interesting kind of... Sorry?
Is he the Zeitgeist guy?
Yeah, he's the one who does, but this was a mistake. And then there's loads of black and white clips of dancing girls or something. But it was brilliant on the Cultural Revolution and how it came about. Anyway, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's worth looking at if you're interested. It was a terrifying time. And there is something particularly chilling when the young seize the initiative in these instances. That was what was signally disturbing about that. The young would shop their parents, their teachers, and these people would suddenly find themselves in the struggle sessions.
And you see it in other, other places where young people sort of seize power, like in the Salem witch hunts. That was all, pubescent girls denouncing adults as witches.
Yes, and it's an upside down world, isn't it? There's something wrong about it, obviously, but there's a kind of mania, there's a zeal about it when they get that,
Well, you can see it on social media, which is basically like the Chinese Cultural Revolution, but they can't, build the gallows because it's made out of electricity.
Yes.
So, but you can see the way they round on people. Anybody who's stepped or seen to step out of line with whatever, strict ideology. And obviously the ideology is changing all the time, so it's impossible to stay within its boundaries. Like, you can see with J.K. Rowling, a few years ago, she was the darling of the woke left.
And
then she has one little opinion that strays outside the boundary, and she must be condemned.
Well, this is, it's Robespierre, isn't it? I mean, we always think of the Cultural Revolution as, a terrible, terrible thing, but is it human nature or was it culturally specific to China and perhaps to the communism that come before? But the French Revolution was every bit as bad, and they went from 0 to 60 in about 3 years, you know, and there were people being chopped up on a daily basis, in the market square. I mean, obviously, we're a long way off that, but I don't think it's a bad thing that some people who who still have some kind of connection to the comedy revolution from the mid-60s to bow out on. Those were the great years, really. And the more people, Rowan Atkinson has been talking about it for some time as well.
Jennifer Saunders as well. And comedians obviously make fun of whatever is the prevailing what truisms, whatever your the sort of received wisdom of the day. And obviously the received wisdom of the day right now is all this woke stuff. But woke people still think that they're, some sort of, oppressed minority fighting back against,
they're the counterculture.
You are the establishment.
Same views as corporations.
You've got equality, diversity and inclusion departments in every organisation making sure that everything's as woke as possible.
It's extraordinary. The Daily Mail now has a story that will put allegations of FIFA corruption in Qatar into context, Leo.
Yeah, so this is a bit more important than that. So conkers has become the latest sport. I didn't know it was a sport. I thought it was something that fell off a tree. But apparently it's a sport as well. There's been alleged wrongdoing after a woman was crowned world champion, despite her father being one of the judges in the contest. I mean, that sounds pretty corrupt to me.
Yeah.
So her father, Mr. Jenkins, said he drilled holes in conkers but didn't help his daughter pick them. And that's not a coded message to a spy. And his daughter is school nurse Fee Aylmore. She's 49. That's 49. I thought she was going to be 8. You know what I mean? Like, 49
she's been trying for 30 years, apparently, to win this. She's got the classic never give up on your dreams
Yes.
It took me 31 years of playing.
Conkers. He's battering 7-year-old kids out of the way, like, with a ball bearing she's made black with a Sharpie. That's insane. So she,
like a Will Ferrell film.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. He's and her father is 80, and he's a guru known as King Conker. I'd like to see him take over Manhattan. And he was one of the judges at the event. So it seems a cut and dried case of. There's
cut and dried is 2 of the stages in preparing a conquer. Of course. We used to bathe them in vinegar in the airing.
Apparently that's cheating.
Is that listed as one of the bad things?
Page document.
I do always pick a few up I picked my first one up last weekend. Actually, I was back home as well in St Albans. I say home where I grew up.
Yeah.
And went to the park, and there was a lovely pilot. I do find them a wonderful thing, conkers. I don't want to play conkers, but they are amazing little artefacts, aren't they? They're so satisfying. And acorns as well. I just want to make a little potpourri with them now.
Get on Etsy.
Anyway, Jonathan, The Telegraph now. Jamie Oliver is in campaigning mode, and he's parked his scooter on Marcus Rashford's lawn.
That's right. As ever, he is in campaigning mode. So Jamie Oliver says not all parents should carry burden of school lunches. So Jamie Oliver has suggested that parents should not have to carry the burden of school lunches, as he said that parents end up prioritising quantity over quality when it comes to packed lunches, which costs them around £20 a week per child, which stacks up with more than one child.
Some basic maths.
Yeah.
More
food is more expensive.
You've got more children. Can you not just...
I know he thinks he's Jesus, but he can't actually make
To be fair, he's aiming this at quasi-quartet.
Yes, that's true.
I actually worked for Jamie Oliver for 1 week in Fresh One. This is like back when I still thought I wanted a job. And it's just pictures of him everywhere. Everywhere.
Like Mao.
Yeah. Yeah,
he is despised by some people, but with a greater passion than any other public figure, considering he's not really done anything wrong, except somehow put people's backs up.
He's done a lot of good. I mean, some people complain about nannyism or whatever, but I mean, he got turkey Twizzlers off the menu, made school dinners healthier, made them
and actually,
I
am able to follow some of his recipes and deliver good food as well. I do actually like his cookbooks.
I did a HelloFresh.
And if we want a high-growth Britain, surely giving free school meals to every child would just free up so much time and productivity.
I know some people say it's like a slippery slope into communism or whatever, but I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
I totally do. I would go breakfast as well. I would just say every child should arrive at school knowing that it will have something nutritious to start the day with, a nutritious snack at half-time and a nutritious lunch. And then you're on your own.
And then they'll also study better and they'll be more alert, they'll be better
and also
citizens
protected from not just not having any lunch or whatever, but being given crap by the parents who are not educated enough or don't care enough. I mean, there are some parents who probably just think, that'll do, you know. And you need a bit of protein, you need some decent animal fat, ideally.
And they'll have the energy to run away from people trying to transition them.
Exactly. Chopped mermaid, fried mermaid, even better. No, absolutely with you on that one. So, OK, Jamie gets a free pass from us. Leo, the Daily Mail, Jacinda Ardern has had enough of bovine belching.
Yeah, so New Zealand's government has proposed taxing the greenhouse gases that farm animals make from burping and peeing as part of a plan to tackle climate change. From the grammar in that, I'm not sure if they burp and pee as part of the plan to tackle climate change. But the government said that farmers would be able to recoup the cost of these taxes by charging more for climate-friendly products. I don't know. I don't think markets really need a lot of government involvement and, levies and saying, oh, you should sell this. And, we don't need a centrally controlled economy. Farmers know what they're doing. And agriculture is vitally important to New Zealand's economy.
Yeah.
They've got 10 million beef and dairy cattle and 26 million sheep, only 5 million people. So if you are inclined towards sheep, you've got your pick.
It's almost incredible to think that we have reached a stage very quickly, very suddenly, really, where such an overwhelmingly agrarian and, might almost say, like, undeveloped country as part of the developed world. I mean, part of the Anglophone world.
Are we talking about Scotland or New Zealand?
Yes, New Zealand is now like anxious that it's contributing to greenhouse gases through.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It almost seems like this mania. I mean, you look at the belching factories of the industrialised mainland of China.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you're going,
the concrete that
oh
gets
no,
laid out.
I can't believe our cows are contributing to.
And
Are
New
you
Zealand-
insane?
and
This
New-
is paradise. This is like the Shire before the Orcs came.
And New Zealand is made out of mountains, so if sea levels rise, it doesn't matter.
No, they're
They're
fine.
not the Maldives.
And they're not
an
allowed
atoll.
to leave, are they now anymore? They're not allowed to come back because they can't get their COVID passport.
Yeah.
So, they've eliminated all those greens. I think they should be allowed to have a few cows. I think that's a bit crazy.
Yeah.
Our next story, Jonathan, Telegraph. And one cannot help but wonder if it's even a worthwhile commercial these days if it doesn't attract criticism of insensitivity, it seems.
That's true. I mean, he's everyone's favourite wonky-faced heartthrob. So Ryan Gosling, he is in Gucci's new advert, and that's been criticised for poor taste because of reminders of migrant crisis. So a campaign featuring a celebrity, Ryan Gosling, unloading suitcases by a beach. It's attracting criticism for its sickening similarities to the current plight.
Have you seen it?
I've not seen it.
I watched it this evening on YouTube. It does not bear a resemblance, sickening or otherwise. I mean, he's got a pickup truck full of extremely expensive Gucci luggage.
Yeah.
It's quite it's quite a charming sort of contrast. He's obviously, the pickup truck is a rough old ute.
Yeah.
And it's full of high-end luggage.
Whereas with migrants, you can tell that it's fake. The Louis Vuitton badge is just a bit skew with.
I just think this is a fake story they've put out to get people to watch the
press.
ad
I mean,
and go, oh yeah.
Is it offensive, a man unloading suitcases? I mean, there's a lot to unpack.
Book. Get rid of Jonathan. Just
sack.
Yeah, no, I think it's a con, but it's quite a nice advert. I don't know that he's wonky-faced, Ryan Gosling.
No, I'm just projecting.
I was going to say, is that your
Basically, everyone likes him and it annoys me.
He is quite sickeningly handsome. I do
before.
think Gosling, though, it's a funny name. Do you think that's like
It's
a
a baby
subconscious
goose.
baby goose? Have they done that to get kids to get little
Well,
girls to love
apparently
baby Gosling?
names come from what your ancestors did, like Thatcher.
Yeah.
Somebody fixed the roof.
Yes.
Plumber.
So his parents were what?
Geese.
Baby geese.
When he gets to the age of majority, he should become Ryan Goose.
That's so much
Ryan
less attractive.
Gander. Leo, you've just had a baby. Please tell us about another reason that men can regret their orgasms.
So, no, I don't regret mine. She's an absolute delight, although she hasn't started asking me for money or bringing boys home yet. But men can develop an allergy to their own orgasms with immediate flu-like symptoms, scientists have found after spending some time in the garden shed with a copy of Razzle.
Who's that in the wardrobe?
They're gonna extend the study to women as soon as they find enough women who've had an orgasm. But scientists...
It's a myth.
Scientists think that the problem is known as post-orgasmic illness syndrome could result from an allergic or autoimmune response to the sufferer's own sperm.
Let's follow it then.
Yeah, that's a fair point. In what sense is they've got rid of the sperm? They must be having less of an allergy.
I've got a rash in my belly button. I mean, that's not so much of a problem, is it?
That's bizarre.
I think it gets into the blood if they've had any minor injuries in the genitalia. It can get into the bloodstream, and then there's the allegedly. What do I know?
I think the French used to call it tristesse.
The
little sadness that comes upon you,
yeah.
the ennui, the sense of having climaxed and then nothing on the other side of the peak.
Yeah, whereas in the West we call it post-nut reality. that sort of clarity you get, and you're like, oh my God.
We have time for this
her?
evening, folks. Thank you to my guests. I will be back here tomorrow night. I have no idea who my guest will be, but don't forget John Cleese on Thursday. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I'm beginning to experience the tristesse of the anti-climax as we speak. Good night.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you